Remember a few years ago when Tim Tebow got really hot and he went on this ridiculous winning streak? And if you watch the games, they were all the same. Tebow would be terrible for 3 quarters, and then he would come back and have one drive, and Matt Prater was the field goal kicker, and he'd kick it, and Denver's defense was great, and Matt Prater was great, and they were winning these games like 17-14 and 16-13 and 10-9. And I remember saying at the time, that's not sustainable. A franchise quarterback, what makes a franchise quarterback is Aaron Rodgers, who can win with no running game, who can get to a Super Bowl with no defense. Because the chances are, if you're a quarterback for 15 years in this league, you'll have a good defense about 6 years, a bad defense about 4, and then you'll be in the middle the rest of them. And you'll have a great running game of the 15 years, 3 years. You have a pretty good running game, 4, and then for 4, 5, or 6, or 7, you'll have an average to below average running game. Tim Tebow was winning when everything was perfect. Matt Prater was the hottest kicker in the league. The defense was unbelievable. You were playing kind of a weak schedule. By the way, Tebow went 0 for 2 and got blown out twice against the Patriots. So I never look at a quarterback's winning streak. How are you winning? The great quarterbacks don't need everything to work out perfectly. This is why Drew Brees is 3-0 this year against Cam Newton. Yesterday, Drew Brees had no running game. He's an old man. He had no running game. He never had the football. He only had it 22 minutes. He sat on that bench most of the game and watched the other team, meaning an offensively rhythmic team never got any rhythm. Oh, but Colin, he's got such great weapons. Well, he couldn't use the running back weapons. They couldn't run because Carolina stacked the box. They never had the ball. His team had 4 times as many penalties. He'd already beaten Carolina twice with blowouts. So he, as the leader of the team, had to galvanize his troops and convince them all week and all day at practice, hey, this Carolina team's good, even though we've blown them out twice. And he still won. Tom Brady, no Julian Edelman, number 1 seed, no Gronk Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers, no running game ever. Win, win, win. No defense, win, win Super Bowls. But Cam Newton yesterday had the ball the entire game, had a at least competent running game, 4.5 yards a carry. Team only had 2 penalties all day. Cam loses, and his receivers. I mean, he just doesn't have the receiver. Oh, so Cam has to have everything perfect to win. He's got to have a good running game and a competent defense. By the way, Carolina's defense this year in total yards was 7th, better than New Orleans. This is why I've always said about Cam. Anytime Cam loses, there's always an excuse. Drew Brees could have used a multitude of excuses yesterday. He had no running game. He'd already blown him out twice. His team had 4 times the penalties. I mean, he was sitting watching the game. They had the ball 22 minutes. Carolina had it almost 38 minutes. Cam was in the red zone all day. Cam's offensive line did a pretty good job. They had a running game. New Orleans' offensive line was mauled at the point of attack. So, yes, if everything's perfect for Cam and every receiver and everybody this and Cam's got no talent, I don't know. Greg Olsen's a pretty good tight end. That's talent. Christian McCaffrey looks pretty good to me. That defense pretty good to me. Cam's had coaching stability, better than average defenses. McCaffrey's a hell of a player. Greg Olsen's a good tight end. Funchess, when he's healthy, is fine. But again, Drew Brees, this is why he's great. Because the great quarterbacks in this league win when they don't have their weapon. I mean, Drew Brees went into that game and had no running game. They literally decided, we're not going to let you run the ball at all. Russell Wilson won a Super Bowl without a star receiver or tight end. That was pre-Jimmy Graham, and Percy Harvin only played in the Super Bowl. That's why I've always been a fan of Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson won a Super Bowl with a defensive-minded head coach, a below-average offensive line, and no receiver or tight end of note. That's Andrew Luck gets to the AFC Championship with a loopy owner, a terrible GM, an average coach, and no Pro Bowlers. Well, but he has that one wide receiver. Folks, the New York Giants have great wide receivers. How many games they win this year? Receivers are not dictating who wins and who loses in this league. If it was about wide receivers, the Pittsburgh Steelers would never beat the Patriots. The Patriots always beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. Wide receivers do not elevate teams to... They don't. They're the icing, not the cake. The cake in Carolina is good. The coaching's good. The defense is good. They usually run the football. They've got stability. The cake in Carolina is good. The icing, the receivers, average. But let me shift gears, I'm starting by saying basically Drew Brees yesterday, that's why he's great. He had a lot of things go against him. He still won. So yesterday, this is what I always hear with Cam Newton. He's got no good receivers. Which, by the way, Robert Woods was no good either until he went and played with Sean McVay. Then he was a star. Systems and quarterbacks make receivers. But I heard this yesterday because Cam made a really good throw to a receiver and he dropped it in the end zone. And it was a really nice pass, and it was dropped. And people say, and it was a hell of a pass. And Cam yesterday, in terms of accuracy, was pretty good by Cam standards. He wasn't Brees good, but it's a great pass. No question it was dropped. No excuses. But it's this idea that Cam is the only quarterback that has this problem. By the way, do you know who leads the NFL in drop passes? It's not Cam Newton's team. It's Atlanta. Matt Ryan's passer rating has been over 100 in his last 5 playoff games. His team leads the NFL in drops. Cam doesn't even have the most drops in his own division. Certainly not in the NFC. In fact, Carolina's 23rd in drops. Stop giving me these excuses for Cam. His receivers are no good. You know what's funny? In 7 years with Cam Newton, they've never had a team lead the NFL in drops. In fact, in the 7 years with Cam Newton, Carolina's 6th fewest drops. Ted Ginn played with Cam Newton. Do you remember what speedy Ted Ginn did with Cam Newton? You kept saying that Ted Ginn was no good. He had a 45% catch rate. Ted Ginn now plays for the Saints and Drew Brees. He has a 75% catch percentage. Quarterbacks make the receivers. Ted Ginn's played for both. Spectacular yesterday when they called on him. Caught the ball yesterday. That's because Drew Brees from 50 yards out hands the ball to you, as they say. Third time this year, Brees 3-0 against Cam. And all I hear is excuses. Receivers can't be good. Drop passes. Drop passes everybody deals with. I just showed you. And secondly, to be a great quarterback, it's what you do with your lack of blank, with your lack of time of possession, with your lack of a running game, with your lack of a great offensive line. Russell Wilson won a Super Bowl with no star tight end receiver and a below-average offensive line. Russell Wilson won a Super Bowl. Andrew Luck went 11-5, 11-5, 11-5, and was surrounded by most people now that are fired. 0 Pro Bowlers. Stop making excuses. You want to be a lead in any business in life? Then you have to be able to perform when everything isn't perfect. That's what makes great. Good people can perform when everything's perfect. The news anchor who's great, the prompter goes down. That's the great news anchor, and you don't know as a viewer. Yesterday, the prompter went down for Drew Brees. No running game. But his receivers. You think Michael Thomas would have 200 catches in 2 years if Blake Bortles was his quarterback? Drew Brees is the story there, not the talented kid on the outside. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.